Am I back?
Hold on just a second. Okay. Oh.
Check.
Oh, yes. I hear you.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. Here we go. All right, we're back. What's the crazy times, man? Technology is not my friend. Technology is not my friend. I think this is God telling me something. I think this is God telling me, all right, you got the hang of this mic. It's time to move it to the next level. I hear you, God. I hear you. What's up? Okay, we're back. I was flowing too, man. When I found out y'all couldn't hear me, I was going. I think there's something with the microphone. I did see the red light was going in and out. I wasn't thinking about anything, but I guess that was because something was happening. We were so close. I was flowing. Now thank you, Stephanie. Now you can hear Jody. We can hear now, right? Man, I was flowing. I don't even know what the last thing was that I said. All right, but listen, I don't want to waste your time. Let me know what y'all want to talk about. Thank you, Roman, for rolling with the punches, man. This is good. I'm getting all the kings out now early. Thank God. As we begin to grow, I'll have all the kicks. Now I know I need a microphone. Now I know my internet is good. We don't got to worry about that. Now I just need to get a new microphone set up, and I think then. And then we're rolling. No more. Okay, what I was saying was the things I wanted to talk about. So things I want to talk about is Epstein survivors made a statement today. The second thing I just want to talk about is Google and the antitrust lawsuit, because it does impact us all. And also, too, is really kind of going to the conversation of AI and technology and where we are with this dynamic and system. And then the third thing that I want to talk about is what we saw in China with the military parade. And then I'm going to talk my stuff with the sports. But let me know what you guys want to talk about, too, as well. Put it in the chats. As always, we're going to address all your questions and your comments. Kendall, you might have to, the way my setup is situated, actually text me the comments that are putting it into the typical document. Just text me and say so I can see it and kind of go from there. That way we can keep the questions going smoothly and seamlessly. Just because there's so much breaking news that I need to be able to report out in real time, like what is happening. Like I said before, I didn't see it coming with the Epstein situation, but what we saw on the steps of the Capitol today was remarkable. In the sense of a bipartisan effort by two congressmen, on Massey on the Republican side and Khan on the Democratic side, bringing together to really spearhead a discharge petition. I'm going to talk about what a discharge petition is in a second. But we also saw Marjorie Taylor Greene there too as well. And so this is a true bipartisan effort and dynamic. And what's interesting, what we heard President Trump say from the Oval Office in response to these survivors giving their testimony was that this was a Democratic hoax. It's really hard now to position this as a Democratic hoax when it is being co-led by Massey and by Khan, and then also too, you see Marjorie Taylor Greene there. That is not a Democratic hoax. I also, too, didn't see this strategy coming forward. I knew that once Congress came back to office after the summer holiday and once they came back into session, there was a conversation that this Epstein case was not going, and the Epstein files was not going to let up, that we were going to continually see it. I wasn't expecting the survivors to do such a emotionally charged press conference today, along with the two representatives that are going to be putting forward this discharge petition. These survivors talked about their experience. They talked about the pain that they suffered at the hands of this. They recounted some of their experiences. They encountered the feeling of intimidation. They encountered and recalled how they felt in the moment and how that has impacted them. This case has been one of those moments in politics that's been able to withstand the changing news cycle of the day. Typically, we would talk about something in the news, and we just as collectively as a society would talk about something in the news, maybe if it's a really big story for 2 days. less of an exploit for a day, but this one has been able to withstand months. And I think part of the reason why that this has been so locked into the news is because of the way that President Trump, when he was a candidate, really discussed the Epstein case, really discussing the transparency and really bringing forward what was going to happen, and in order to find out, to get to the bottom of it. You see a lot of individuals who are currently in President Trump's administration, currently right now, we're asking for the Epstein files to be released. You see that the MAGA wing of the punditry and the podcast system in space is really calling for transparency, really calling for the release of the files. You also, too, have seen President Trump's Attorney General, Pam Bondi, when she said that the files are sitting on her desk and the client list was on her desk, she really stoked the fire of this conversation, then to just retract and say that she wasn't referring to an actual client list that didn't exist. And so now there has become this conversation of transparency, right? And this transparent of what is being hidden from the American public to see. Also, too, you have to connect the dots of that we have seen President Trump in pictures with Jeffrey Epstein. You do see President Trump making reference to Jeffrey Epstein, liking them young. That's a quote. And since then, you have seen President Trump order his Department of Justice officials to go down to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell in prison to figure out what's more there, really leading to, I think, more distrust. I think in an effort to probably quell the rumblings, I think it added to it, right? Because we all know that Ghislaine is so desperate and to get out of prison. The question was, what would she offer? What would she say in order to help her case in an appeal aspect of it? Would she be angling for a pardon? What would she be angling for? So when you bring all these dynamics into play, it actually creates more of a demand for the story, because there seems to be, in terms of those who are wanting and requesting the Epstein files, is there a cover-up? And is there a delay? And the fact that President Trump is calling it a Democratic hoax isn't passing the muster, because of the fact that we can see a lot of the demand is coming from the MAGA wing of the Republican Party and from the MAGA wing of the media aspect of it, from traditional and non-traditional, in terms of bringing it on. What I found really fascinating was the survivors mentioned that they know who they were around, who was around Epstein when they were around. And what they now have said in statements is that they are willing to create their own client list. I think if anything, should put a lot of people on notice, those who have been around Epstein, possibly who knows what they're going to say if they do release a client list. Is it a client list of saying that people were actually just there? Or would they say this is a client list that engaged in abuse with them? Part of the challenge of releasing these Epstein files is the amount of information that would have to be redacted, because these individuals are minors and they are abuse victims, right? And so it's hard to, one, show their names, but if these individuals are coming forward, does that relieve the pressure, right, for other victims who have been silent to maybe their strength in numbers? They may want to come forward. And if they come forward, is there more strength in numbers? But the challenge, though, as well, of releasing the victims, releasing their own client list, is what happens in terms of the perception of those people they name. Part of the reason why the Epstein files has been a challenge to release it all in totality, and also to the redacted nature of it, is because it wasn't a finalized dynamic of the investigation, right? So if you release the entire files, you are releasing names that may have come up from witness statements, that may come up in witnesses saying they heard they were there possibly, but there's no corroborating information when it comes to it. That is the danger of releasing a file altogether, because an investigative file is just exactly what it is. It's a discovery. It's finding information. It's interviewing witnesses. It doesn't mean the investigation has brought forward anything that's an indictment on these individuals. And so these individuals whose names may be associated with it, there is no indictments that's been brought forward from these individuals. And so that is one of the dangers of releasing a file altogether, because what will it do to those individuals who are just named, but without any cooperating evidence or testimony on why that they were there, nor had they had a chance to describe why they were listed or why they were in the files altogether. So this really is a delicate position that the Department of Justice is in, that President Trump is in with this administration in terms of releasing this. But I think the lesson that Trump is realizing now is it's one thing to create this rhetoric when you're on the campaign trail without realizing once you do get into office, right? And once you are at the Department of Justice, all the challenges of releasing information, right? And I think sometimes it's good that there is a temperance that is put in place so that files just are not released, because it could cause harm to a couple of things: to the victims if it's not redacted, and also to it could cause harm to those who may be named within those files. So we'll see how that's going to play out. Now, what these two, I talked about a discharge petition. I want to explain what that is for people who may not be familiar with it. So what these two congressmen are putting forward is a discharge petition which allows members of the House to go around leadership in order to bring a bill to the floor, out of committee on into the floor, without having to go through the proper channels of committee chairs and also to the Speaker of the House. So just a really quick civics refresher on the way that bills get made. I know a lot of times some people may not be aware of how bills get made, but they get made, they start within committee. That's, you hear all these committees, right? And so this idea of committees, they meet, they figure out what is going to be the most pressing issue, policy, bill that they would like to advance out of their committee that focuses on a particular interest that is the highlight or the focus, whether it's like the banking committee, for example, the finance committee, right? So what bills and legislation should come out of that committee that should go to the floor, right? So once it goes out of committee, that means that a bill is being formed. The committee has voted to bring this out of committee to the larger House of Representatives. And at that moment, that's when it's up to the Speaker of the House to determine to bring the bill forward, and also to the priority of bills that he would like, or he or she, that they, the Speaker of the House, would like to bring forward. What a petition to discharge does is, if you get the necessary requisite members to sign this petition, it goes around the need to go to committee. And it goes around the Speaker of the House, who could allow or block a bill going forward to the floor for a vote. So this circumvents the entire system in order to bring something to the floor. If passed, this is a rare maneuver that happens in Congress, because it requires so many members that you would have to go against your own party leadership, right? Putting you typically in a normal situation at the crosshairs of your own party, right? And going against your party leadership. But if it does go forward, it does show how much of a bipartisan effort that it is of a certain issue. So in this case, what these two congressmen are doing is presenting a discharge petition in order to allow for the Department of Justice to release the files of this Epstein case. And so this is why this is such a big deal. This is why this is not something to be taken lightly. And I haven't seen any, excuse me, I don't know what the final potential tally is. I don't know what the whip, or meaning what the votes are looking like in order for this petition to have success. But I will say that having the survivors on the steps of the Capitol in a bipartisan effort, really telling their story, really gives momentum to the idea of this discharge petition in order for these items to go forward. So I'm going to stop right there. Let me know if you guys have any questions, comments. What do you think? Do you think this is an easy as black and white to release the Epstein files? Do you believe that the Epstein files should be released as a whole and in totality? Do you believe that you should continuously be mindful of names who may be in investigation that might not have had any corroborating evidence or witnesses to why that they're there? And then also too, what are your thoughts on the survivors releasing their own, client list? What are your thoughts on some of that? So put it in the chat. Let me know your thoughts on that, because I wasn't expecting the survivors to say that. And I want to be very clear. Survivors have a right to take back the narrative, right? And to feel empowered and to heal in these type of situations that may occur. And so that is going to be what is really interesting, is having to, how do you walk that line, respecting the survivor's needs, right? Making sure survivors are heard, but at the same time, making sure that innocent persons who may have just hung around Epstein or may have been there but did nothing illegal. How do you ensure that those individuals do not get caught up in a perception of alleged wrongdoings, versus how do you balance those who actually committed the acts themselves? I think this is going to be a really tricky thing. And I think that President Trump and his administration has made this matter worse by calling it a hoax, by not taking it serious, right? So quick to get the quick viral moment. I'm thinking about Attorney General Pam Bondi, about the client list is sitting on her desk right now. In the moment to please the audience, and in the moment to please, possibly President Trump or the MAGA Republican Party, they have now put themselves in a very difficult position, right? So this is idea of when media manipulation can really come back and hurt you as you actually are trying to deal with this from a legality perspective. The judge has already ruled that they're not going to release the grand jury testimony, because the interest and the needs of the public does not supersede the need to release the evidence of it. That's the only time a judge can release grand jury statements, is that when the need for the public to see this is so monumental that it calls for the release of the documents from the grand jury. But a judge has already ruled that it does not rise to this level of occasion. Tyrone Elijah, I see that you're saying, I have a question. You said, my question is, how is Trump getting away if everything he's doing, I thought nobody is above the law? Tyrone, give me a little bit more clarification on how Trump is getting away with it. Do you mean how he's able not to release the Epstein files? Is that kind of what you're talking about? I might need a little bit more context with that one. So always answer questions, but I want to make sure it's specific and not too vague, unless it's just a comment that you're saying. So if it's a comment, we'll leave it as that, as a comment. But if not, I'm going to go on and talk about another major case that is happening, because that is wild. Oh, option forward, you said something. You said it could potentially turn into a "I saw you, no you didn't" type thing. There has been too much time in between to alter documents where the public trust was released at this point. That's a really interesting comment. And I think question that you're raising too as well is more of a comment, but also so you can see a question in there at the same time. That is what I mean by when you said the line, "I saw you, no, you didn't" dynamic, right? And so it kind of goes to names who may be part of this large investigative file, but actually there is no corroborating witnesses or evidence to suggest that they actually committed any harm, right? And so that is kind of one of those things. Like if you look at Jeffrey Epstein's, let's say contact list, right? Are all his friends listed in his phone's contact list? Are they guilty by association? Will we allege that they all have done something wrong? And so that's kind of the thought process behind it. And again, I'm not giving cover to anybody here, right? It's just a matter of legally, how do you do this, right? And then like legally, how can you be mindful enough to protect those individuals who kind of just are in the crosshairs by just association, right? One could say, um, you should have known Jeffrey Epstein was doing that, but not everyone may have been privy to um, the what was happening behind the scenes and the abuse that was taking place, to which these victims have come forward to allege was actually happening and taking place. And so this is when this situation gets really, really, really interesting, kind of down to it. All right. Raise your hand if you have heard anything about like this Google antitrust case and situation that is happening and is coming forward right now. I don't want to get too into the weeds of this because this is a lot of legalese speak, kind of dynamic. But at the same time, I think it goes to a couple of things: the speed at to which the government has got to wrap its head around technology from a corporation and perspective, and the corporation when it comes to like innovation. I think also too it goes into how courts are thinking legally about artificial intelligence and tech companies when it comes to antitrust or monopolies. I think also too it's coming down to consumers, right? How are we receiving different options? And then also to coming down to what does it mean by like innovation, right? When it comes down to like innovation as well. And so this is why I wanted to bring this. It's a very fascinating case that took place. So the news broke yesterday, where it was revealed that the antitrust lawsuit that the government brought forward against Google in order to sell off its Chrome, its web browser. It said that Google does not have to sell off its Chrome browser at all, and that there isn't an antitrust dynamic that causes it to break up. But what it does mention, though, is that there are some new stipulations from behavioral structures and dynamics that Google will have to adhere to going forward within this case. Judge Mehta ruled that it's guilty of monopolizing search, but not necessarily having to break up and remove the Chrome from the situation. And how they remedied this situation was saying there's no breakups, there's no bans, there's no breakup of Chrome. But what they did do is ban the exclusive deals and mandatory data sharing. What exclusive deals means is that, have you noticed when you bought a phone or any computer or product, that Chrome is kind of automatically the default browser that is there, right? And not like DuckDuckGo or not Bling's dynamic. That didn't happen just because it appeared into your browser on your phone or computer. It happened because those deals were worked out with Google to pay Apple, to pay any other carrier or product to ensure that Google was the default primary user on that one, which I found to be a really fascinating part about this case because it goes to user data, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And then also, too, it really goes to the idea of data, but that Google must share a certain part of their data, right? Now, what does that mean, share a certain part of the data? So we talked about it bans exclusive deals, right, on that, but it has to share data with other browsers like DuckDuckGo and Bling. This kind of gets to the heart of it, right? And so what the judge is saying is that Google doesn't have to sell off Chrome. It doesn't have to be separate, but it does say that it's a nod and a wink to unfair competitive advantage that Google has had with its ability at scale to sweep through the internet, the World Wide Web of all the data, all the queries in order to index it. So what it's saying is that over time, and Google can say because they're first in, I am going to get to the question of is this fair, right? And I do want to talk to you about this too as well. The reason Google is so powerful with this browser, like with Chrome, is because if you notice, if you put in the search, like how do you make iced tea, right? It comes back instantaneously, right? That is because over time, Google has been able to scrape the World Wide Web of all the information on tea, it's been able to scrape the World Wide Web over time of all the recipes of iced tea. It's been able to scrape the World Wide Web of all the dynamics of climate that makes good fertile ground for tea to grow. And so it even goes down to that, right? It even goes down to, if you ask it, not only how do you make iced tea, but how do you make which brand of tea makes the best iced tea, right? So you can go through all of that dynamic because it can learn from the region that the tea is coming from. It's scraping the World Wide Web, right? It's learning all of those things. And then what it does is, folks, it scrapes that and then it puts it into indexes, right? So, lack of better words, think of it puts it into columns. Lack of better words, remember the old school. I was going to use a library example, but some of us may not have gone to libraries in a while. I may not even use libraries, but it goes back to, like, if you have like a library or let's use a file cabinet. We've all had file cabinets, right? If you have a file cabinet and a file cabinet is titled recipes, when you pull out that file cabinet, all these folders of recipes of iced tea is in there, right? So think that, but think digitally. Now, this is what it means, like, to index. And that's why Google and Chrome is so powerful. And it gets such an authoritative query. When you ask it for something, it does come back with an authoritative response that is quality and that is verified. What the judge is saying is that that is what is creating a monopoly and unfair advantages to startups and companies like DuckDuckGo and Bling, because they haven't had the number of years into it, nor do they have the resources, nor do they have the scale in order to acquire all of that data, in order to create a query, in order to create an output that is as quick as Google and as authoritative as Google, right? And so what it's also too saying is, like, there's almost like this feedback loop that keeps Google even better. User inputs data, right? Inputs data by we give Google Chrome data based upon the questions that we're asking. Based on the question that we're asking and what we're inputting into the World Wide Web, Google is able to source that more. Google is able to create better indexes as a result of it, and then Google is better to get better outputs. And also, it's true at the same time, then Google is able to get more users, which then goes back to the beginning of the feedback loop, where the users then give us more data with the queries, which then gives more Google things to index, which then gives more users being drawn towards Chrome or Google's browser. So what the judge is saying is that by doing that, it creates an unfair advantage to startups who may be interested in starting up a search. It may give uncompared advantages to saying DuckDuckGo and Bling will never be able to reach that type of height of success. And so it creates an undue advantage. And so that is what they call the remedy or the solve in order for Google not to sell its Chrome. And I thought that was very, very fascinating in a sense. I was thinking to myself, like, is this fair, right? Like, is it fair that Google first in, right? The founders had the idea of it, worked hard to do it. They shouldn't be penalized or need to share its indexes and data with other companies. But the other part that makes me think about when it comes down to the question of fairness is that Google is so dominant in this space that no other company will be able to do it because of that feedback loop. But this is what makes it interesting, right? Because when you think about other monopolies, like when you think about railroads that got created, when you think about telecom industry and like remember like the poles that we see, it's hard to imagine if you didn't grow up in an analog space in a way. It's like if you think about like the telephone poles, or even now if you think about like I guess the towers that we use for our cell phones. If you think about energy systems and energy grids, all those were tools that were needed for the railroad, but they allowed access for other companies to be able to utilize and share those services. And so there is history and precedent when it comes to like physical structures, right? Like railroads, telecom, and energy grid systems, where the government has required shared usage of those entities in order for innovation and other companies to move forward. This is what I mean by the government and the judicial system is actually getting smarter in terms of how they're looking at addressing monopolies and antitrust. Because how you look at antitrust and monopolies from a digital perspective is completely different than how we look at monopolies and antitrust when it comes to like those actual physical structures. And so that's what made me say it may not feel fair to Google, but when you think about that feedback loop about user, more data, better indexes, better output, makes users happy, gets more users, repeat, it is then hard for those other competitive brands and startups to be able to participate in that space. Now, the question is, how much data does Google have to share, right? And that is what's going to be determined. So it doesn't mean that Google has to open up its entire index and database, but just a certain portion of it needs to be shared. It's not the whole thing, which for me, I was like, well, that would impact the intellectual property of Google and what makes Google Google, right? Like what makes Chrome Chrome, right? And so there is just a percentage or portionality aspect of it that will have to be shared, which then leads me to a case that's yet to be cited that I'm looking out for is what's happening with Meta and the idea of the antitrust with like Instagram, right? And so that hasn't been settled at all yet. And so I'm thinking that this is going to be really great insight into determining how judges are going to think about that. And if the judges are thinking that Meta is a monopoly, my hot take is that the judge that is looking, it has not been decided on, we should be hearing something at some point. I don't think that the judge will see Meta as a monopoly, and in particular of the way that Instagram is now and how many other services that are in play and in position and how it's being thought about. And so I think this gives us a little bit of a inclination of how the judges are thinking. If I was Meta, I would have breathed a slight sigh of relief yesterday when this decision it came out because the idea that the government brought forward the case with Meta was that Meta rivals to kill its competition. But a lesson from this Google case is that the courts are very reluctant to break up tech giants. Even when a monopoly is possibly clear, there is still just a reluctance when it comes to that. And what does it mean by competition? We think about Instagram, because there's so many different sites that are apps that we use now in a way that we would possibly have only used it for Instagram. And what we use Instagram for now, and also to what we use Facebook for now, it's all different. This is all about like behavioral remedies that may be used in order to enforce and become like less disruptive to consumers. And particularly if you think about like the Meta thing, if I can stick to the Meta thing really quickly, I think about like market definition, which also too why I think Meta is going to be okay after looking at this. Search was clear a monopoly if you look at how the structure and impact on that. But because you think about just Chrome, and then you can't think about anything else outside of Chrome, right? But you think about like social media, you do think about more fragmented social media, like TikTok, there's YouTube, there's Snapchat. So there's so many different other fragmentations of social media that it's really hard to claim that Meta has a monopoly over social media through Instagram. And so it's harder to justify the breaking up of this company, but they may put together some remedies that may need to happen. That was a lot. That was kind of heavy. I know I really went in tech, but I hope you understand what happened yesterday with the Google case because it does impact you because it's all about how you search. I know I have some friends who do like using DuckDuckGo. They think it gives them more privacy when it comes to what their searches are coming up. It also too thinks about those of us who are possibly looking at innovation and founders or maybe creating products and entities. It gives a way to think about that too as well. And also too, obviously, Meta going forward, we all use Instagram, we all use YouTube, we all use products that Meta has created. And so I think that's kind of what makes it really interesting, including here like these Meta glasses that I have, these Ray-Bans. And so we all use a form of Meta products, whether we like it, at least once in our lifetime. We may not use it every day, but at least once in our lifetime. And so I think it's important to see like, what does that mean? And what does this mean for the quality experience of the consumer, which is also who I want to bring it up, right? The quality experience of the consumer for Google, for your search options, and also to the quality of the experience possibly could happen with Meta. What happens if Meta gets broken up, right? And what happens to Instagram? What does that look like? I always think about that when it comes to like TikTok. If TikTok is broken up or gets sold off from its mothership, does that change the way the algorithm works and that make it less unique? And the reason why that people loved TikTok. All right. Any questions or comments that you may have? I know that we are approaching the time that's going forward. Like I said before, there was so much to talk about, but I was so excited, obviously, to talk about the Google stuff, if you couldn't tell. I think it was really, really exciting. Unfortunately, from what I understand, is Google has a type of monopoly on information, and companies are seeking Google to share their data to level the playing field. That's great. That means the takeaway is you understood what is happening when it comes to that. And so the idea is to level out the playing field, level out the competition, and allow other competitors to be able to share the data indexes that Google has. But the question remains is we don't know how much of it is going to be at play. But the takeaway is that Google does not have to break up or sell off Chrome, which would have had huge implications for Google because that is like one of their major top ad revenue sources, right? Is search. And so that would have had a huge implication on it going forward. Thank you, Option. Shani Cooley, is it fair for Google? They did the work to get where they are. Others should have to do the same work. I know. See, Shani, this is why you're my people. I really went back and forth on this idea of fair, not fair, right? And so a part of me says that it's not fair that Google has to be able to share its data in the way the capacity is. But when I think about the scale that Google is when it comes to search, if you think about that example of that loop, right? So just if I can illustrate that example, folks, really quickly, the example is the user then inputs, queries, information into Chrome to then which Google has more information to scour the World Wide Web and maybe thinking about the questions. Think about this, Shani, and audience too as well. It's like, you notice when you start typing something into search, you will say like, how do you make, right? And then all of a sudden, it pretty much automatically fills the remaining comments because it knows based upon your search history, it knows based upon your behavioral dynamics and likes. I mean, there's so much information that is ticking in on you that it could finish your query. But that is because it's scoured so much information around the web. What are people searching during this time period, during this day, during this season? What are some of the things you've been searching for already? And so that is what I mean by the user information data has been inputted into the system, which creates great output and an authoritative output that you can trust, which then makes me or you, the user, satisfied with the query system, which then keeps me sticky or keeps me in the Chrome search ecosystem, which then also gets other users to be satisfied with it as well. So then how do these other companies disrupt that cycle? Now, argument could be that's on them, right? Like that's capitalism, that's competitive advantage. But is it so much of an unfair advantage that these companies can't do it, that then Google has to share its indexes and some of its data? Which that's why I brought up historical and precedent about the ways that the government has looked at monopolies before when it comes to railroads, telecom, and also too when it comes to energy grid systems, and be able to share pieces of that for other innovation or companies to be able to leverage that. So when I thought about the historical aspect of monopolies and antitrust and how the government and the judicial system have seen it, while at the same time they recognize that they should not make Google sell, made me feel comfortable, as if I have anything to do with this, right? As if I actually made search. It made me say, okay, government is understanding, judicial system is understanding. They are looking at these tech companies in a different lens than probably they would have done 5 to 10 years ago. And so now it's all about remedy. Like, how do you split the middle, right? How do you come to a middle ground here? Whoa, that was a lot, man. I'm so excited. Okay, Shawnee, you get it now. Thanks for breaking that down, man. No problem, man. These are very complex situations and subject matters, and so I love breaking these type of complex situation matters down. And I'm always hoping people are with me and tracking and getting it. So because of the fact that you even just said that you get it now, it makes me smile. Big smile, as you can tell. It makes me happy. So is everyone else getting it? Throw some hearts up there. Just let me know you understand it, and I'm actually kind of glad about that because that means like the audience in the MuseRoom really gets technology is really able to handle a wide range of situations. So we can go from like the Epstein files all the way to Google and tech and antitrust, which I absolutely love. But I can't let you go before you lunchtime without talking about trash about sports because tomorrow is the big NFL kickoff. I'm so excited for the Dallas Cowboys and Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, I'm an Eagles. You can tell by the green fly. Eagles fly. Obviously, the Eagles are going to beat the Cowboys. Obviously, the Eagles are going back to the Super Bowl. Yes, I'm talking all my stuff right here, right now. The Dallas Cowboys are going to regret trading Micah. That was such a bad deal altogether. I know everybody's like, at least I'm also too excited now for Kansas City Chiefs because I'm really excited into the soap opera and drama that is Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift now. I think if we thought that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce was a big media moment last season, wait for it. I don't think we are ready for the onset of media and social media posting and viralness that's about to happen between the two of them. That's going to be interesting. I am definitely watching for Jaden Daniels right now with the Washington Commanders. I am so excited for his second season. He was an incredible rookie. This last year's class of rookies were just phenomenal of quarterbacks. This current rookie class, it wasn't this. I don't think there was as great of a rookie class as it was last year. Last year's rookie class, they went off all the way from Green Bay all the way to the Washington Commanders. I'm really excited for Jaden Daniels to see what he's going to do. Obviously, the Baltimore Ravens, I'm excited for them. Lamar Jackson, I think, settled, ready, focused. Let's see where he goes. And Detroit Lions, I am looking at you. I am excited for you too as well. As everybody know, I am from Michigan. I don't root for the Lions, but I'd never root against the Lions. I'm always hoping the Lions have a really great season. I think it would do great for the city of Detroit. They've gotten so close lately, but just haven't been able to get there. I am curious to see what they're going to be able to do. A lot of the team and personnel is still there from this season. Some of their coordinators have gone on to get head coaching jobs at other places, so I want to see how that's going to impact them like going forward. But I'm super excited for it. I'm super excited to see how AI is going to impact this game with the Microsoft tablets being on the sidelines and how they're going to, I think the coordinators are going to be able to use this information query system that we've been talking about to move forward. So that is how I am looking at the NFL season. I'm so excited for kickoff for tomorrow. Obviously, I was talking myself a little bit early. I see Ted Lammy is in here. Ted, congratulations. I got to talk about the college football AP rankings that just came out about a couple hours ago. There's always so much news, man. I'm rushing because I know I don't have a lot of time with you guys, but I'm rushing because I am so pissed that University of Michigan, we were ranked number 14 going into Saturday. We had an incredible game. Bryce Underwood, our $12 million NIL deal player, had a not a perfect game, but like he had no interceptions. And yet they still put us down at 15th. We went down a point. I'm so mad. FSU, Florida State wasn't ranked, shot up. They got the 14th spot. Look, I respect it. They crushed Alabama. Alabama slides down to 21, but I thought we should have been at least over FSU. Here's why. I wasn't expecting us to be number one. I'm not delusional. But think about it. They put so much hype on Archie Manning, which I didn't believe in, right? That was already overhyped. I knew it. I knew what Texas was going to get before he took the field. He was a Manning, Heisman candidate. He's been there 3 years. There's so much expectation. The pressure, right? But nobody's thinking about Bryce Underwood. Bryce Underwood just turned 18 last month. True freshman. First time Michigan started a freshman since 2009. Had over 250 yards, no interception. We were up 31 to set, like 14 or 17 or something of that nature. Like, met all the expectations in front of 120,000 fans. Kept us cool, kept us calm. As a freshman, he deserves more credit than he's getting. I'm not just saying that because he's a Michigan man, but I definitely believe that we should have been at least like 11, right? I'm not delusional. We're going to play Oklahoma this Saturday, and then we'll crack the top 10 then. I'm not worried. We're going to get into the playoff systems. I'm not worried about that. But that is my delusion. But Ted Lammy is in this room. Congrats, Ted. University of Miami. Y'all are number 5. Y'all jumped up. Y'all look good. I'm happy y'all beat Notre Dame. I can't stand Notre Dame. Notre Dame needs to join the conference. I'm so mad their whole independent system and what they're able to get away with. And so Ohio State, you deserve it. You got it. Go Buckeyes. I'm not even mad. I want y'all to be undefeated come the last week in November when y'all play Michigan so we can beat y'all undefeated. It just makes the taste of victory that much better. All right, let me see who's talking what here. Ted Miami with the Dolphins. Eagles got to go through. Oh, okay. Anthony, you're San Francisco. All right. KC, Jody, you with Kansas City. Are you excited for Taylor? Are you excited for the wedding? Are you excited for all the madness that is going to be Taylor Swift and Chelsea Kelvis, this Kansas City team in time? Mika Boo, Giants. I see you. I think the Giants are always going to struggle. I really do. I think they're always going to struggle. Anthony McCarthy, absolutely. Let's see what he got. Marlon with the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders. I just think it's such a strange team. I'm sorry, 70, but I just think the Raiders I don't know. I never felt good about them being in Vegas. It just feels weird. I haven't wrapped my head around that. Ted's talking trash. He said the ACC got something for y'all. Got something to say. All right, Ted. Stephanie, I knew she would come in, but who's number 1 though? I gave y'all some credit, Steph. I mean, you can't deny it. Your defense is actually really good this year, Stephanie. So I think it's going to be the defense being Ohio State. I do think it's going to be a really great game this year between Michigan and Ohio State, but Michigan still takes it because our quarterback is just going to be better than your quarterback, and your defense is going to be worn out by the time that season ends, trying to save y'all so much. Oh, Jim, you're in here to the Buckeyes. I should have known, Jim, you had to say something. And Browns, gross. How are you, Buckeyes and the Browns? My God. I hope you're doing yoga and meditation and sound baths, bro, because that's just an awful combination. All right, go blue, baby. All right, we're for the 2:00 hour. Yo, that was so much fun rocking with y'all. Thank you about the patience of going through what we went through with the sound, but now I know I need to get a new microphone out the gate. So that'll be fixed and adjusted next week. I love y'all. So much fun. I'm glad you guys rocked it. I'm so glad you guys understood what was happening. All right, folks. Until next Wednesday, let's keep it going. I love y'all. I'm about to, as I say, end the stream now. Peace. Love y'all.